Hello and welcome to the reading of Agastya, Purpose of Life, from the sacred discourses of Agastya Valipadu. Today's topic is jealousy and anger. So, last week, when we were discussing this portion about jealousy, we understood that jealousy occurs mainly in relation to others. You do not become jealous of yourself. There's not, it's always about another being, another human being, whether it is a family, friend, siblings, or even at work. It's always about jealousy when you compare yourself to another. Now, Appa says, and we'll continue with that. Jealousy may occur between parents and children, siblings, friends, or couples. When anger and pride combine with jealousy, then it may lead to dire situations. So jealousy in itself is bad. The moment you compare yourself to someone else, then it makes you feel smaller. So a person who has a lot of self-confidence is not going to feel jealous. A person who is content with what he has is not going to feel jealous. But it's only when you think you lack something, and you think you lack something only because you're focusing externally on what is out there. You're looking at things externally. You're looking at materials, you're looking at money, you're looking at status. So these things, as spiritual aspirants, we know are not important. We just need what we need. And if we understand the difference between need and want, we'll understand that God has always given us what we need. We always have food, clothing, and shelter. Beyond that, what do we need? Really not much. But unfortunately, because of what society dictates, what society says is something special, we all want to aspire to do that. So let us take a look example of the latest weddings that are taking place. People spend billions on weddings, but what is the use? Two people are getting married, and that's all there is to it. And instead of focusing on the fact that two people are getting married and they're going to, live together and bring forth children, if that is what they want to do, which is one of the purposes of marriage, now more importance is given to the wedding itself, because people are trying to flaunt, to show off. That is not important. In the same way, as spiritual aspirants, we don't need to show off anything, not even our spiritual progress. If necessary, we can share it with people who understand. But when we start talking about our experiences, it creates jealousy in the spiritual circles. So, then people start comparing each other. So if you remember, everything stems from comparing ourselves to another. So Appa says, when a third person refers to the bounties of other and makes the person feel slighted, then jealousy increases. Now, jealousy in by itself, because we are already focusing on the external things, is bad. But when someone else adds fuel to the fire, they say, oh, look at that person, he's better than you. And there are people who do that. So when you are confronted with such a situation, what do? You start beginning to understand and looking at things as a spiritual aspirant, understanding, okay, what do I really need? Do I need to look like beautiful, like one of those film stars? No. Look at that. How many women and men are so, totally consumed with trying to look beautiful? Society is dictating what beautiful is. Beauty lies in the heart. And as spiritual aspirants, we need to understand that. We need to start divorcing ourselves from the ideas that society has implanted in all of us. That begins the first part of getting rid of even the idea of jealousy or comparing ourselves to another. So Appa says, how can we fight jealousy? When comparing oneself to another, one thing needs to be remembered. What does it matter how anyone else is? We must feel happy for another's fortune, be it emotional or material. Now, this is very hard. This is very hard when we are still caught up in society, when We are still dictated by what society thinks is right or the best. And it is a big fight that we have to undergo within ourselves to begin to understand that if somebody has something more than I do, I'm happy for that person. If you really can get to that state where you're no longer feeling jealous of another, then you have faced one of the greatest challenges in spiritual life. Many people think spirituality is all about sitting and meditating. It is not. In spirituality, first setting the foundation of a righteous life, righteous behavior, righteous thought, walking on the path of Dharma is the greatest foundation. Because without all this, without conquering all these enemies, these asuras, these demons, we are not going to go forward in spirituality. We can gain, through intense practice of, certain chakra meditations and, rising Kundalini, we can do a lot of things technically. Just like, acquiring a skill, we can in meditation acquire certain powers, certain things. But as long as there is dirt in any of these things, as long as we have not conquered any of these things, they have a potential to affect us adversely to a higher extent, especially when you're progressing internally through the chakras. If that area of the chakra, Appa explains this in Valipadu, is not clean, connected with these kind of emotions, the negative effect can be really, really strong. So as spiritual aspirants, or even common man who is not yet truly into the spiritual sadhana, let us start learning to control our own emotions, like jealousy. And if we find it very hard, then he says, ask God or Guru, help them. So next, then Agastya says, understand that there is no connection between your situation and the situation of others. Now, remember this. We have to remember that. What one has in terms of materials, name, status are all dependent on one's behavior, talent, or situation. If there is some shortfall over all this, one must consider this as something to do with one's karma. To fight jealousy, one must seek help from your guru or God you worship, says Agastya. So what does he mean? If somebody has a different talent, they are more artistic than you, if they can sing better than you, it's based on their behavior, their talent. They have work to do it. And it has nothing to do with you. Nothing stops you from wanting to learn something and learning something. So when you do not want to make the effort, then do not be jealous of another. That is one way. Another thing is, remember, there is life circumstances. We are all born to different life circumstances based on our karmic patterns. We are born into families that will help us and also go into situations which will help us get rid of many of our karmas. So that is why when we see our own life and the way we are, we must understand everything good or bad that is happening to us is happening because of our karmic pattern. So we should not compare ourselves to another. So this is another important stage in spiritual progress where we begin to withdraw our senses or our ideas from the outside world to the inner world. And jealousy is one of the main things. Now let's go on to see what Appa says about anger. Let us take a look at what anger is. Why does one become angry and how is it expressed? A situation that is uncontrollable or unbearable leads to anger. When someone's words or actions are not acceptable to another, then that state is known as anger. A simple example, says Agastya, is when a mother gets angry with a child, it is because of something wrong done by the child. So now Appa is talking about why anger happens. Why does it happen? What is anger? Anger is when something leads you to feel so dissatisfied, so discontent that you express it in a negative way. So someone is telling you something and it affects you. it makes you upset, then you become angry. So he's giving a very simple, beautiful example of a mother getting angry with a child. But also remember why he's giving the example of a mother and a child, and I'll explain that a little later. So mother also gets angry with the child many times. We see our children doing something wrong and we get angry with them, we scold them, we try to correct them. But that is also a different kind of anger. In anger, there are different levels of anger. Some anger occurs because we are dealing with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, like a child. And in that case, we behave like a mother, we guide them, we show them the way, and we direct them. But then there is the anger that affects most of us. And what is that anger? That is the anger that is because of our ego. So, why is that? When someone says something to you, it is your ego that is affected. If you have conquered your ego, if you have forgotten or understood to separate the soul from the body and form that you've given name as Anu or Praveen or Rajaram, know that that is different from what you are. You are a divine soul. So what happens to that soul? What somebody to that body? What somebody says to that body, to that ego that is born or manifested on this earth, doesn't really matter. But when we identify, when the soul identifies or the ego identifies with the body, then we get angry because our ego is hurt, because I have been hurt. So that is something we all must remember, that ego is the root cause of any situation where you get angry. Then Appa says, how does anger occur? If one does not like a particular event, then it creates anger. If that is not forgotten, anger grows into a fire as time passes. If such events do not occur frequently, then the anger increases in stages. At one stage, when one is not able to control it, it is expressed. At such a time, anger is expressed in actions like scolding, criticism, fights, and even killing. So Appa says, when something happens that we do not like, then anger occurs. And if we cannot forget that incidents, if that keeps bothering us, then that anger starts growing against the person. How many times haven't we faced this in our life? Somebody says something, they are gone, people who have heard it are gone, but our ego is hurt, and we hold on to that anger. And the more we hold on to that anger, the more we build on it. We start thinking about it, and the more we think about it, we assimilate that anger with that negativity. And then what happens? If, say, for example, you're thrown into the same situation with another person who keeps making you angry, and there are a lot of people who know how they can push your buttons, then your anger keeps growing. They're having fun, but your anger keeps going. Where can you stop this? How can you stop this? And if this doesn't stop, what happens? You burst out one day. And then you see the other person feeling very happy because they have got a reaction from you. So at a very lower level, let us understand that when somebody is doing something to you, the best way is not to react, because when you react, then you're giving satisfaction to the other person. Now, in a spiritual way, if you look at it, why is that happening? Why is the same person hurting you over and over again in your life? Why is that person part of your life? It is because of your own karmic pattern. You have to understand something through all that. You have to, there is a big lesson in that whole situation. Maybe you need to learn patience. Maybe you need to learn that, okay, when something is being said to me, I need to step aside. The I needs to step aside and watch it objectively. The other thing is, the greatest of the way to counteract that is to say, this is nothing. It is not coming to me. Whatever is happening, I'm just going to observe. It is fine. I'm going to smile and I'm going to keep going, because this is not what I am. Because you know what you are. What you know, nobody can take away from you. Somebody can come and say, you're a liar, you're a cheat, you're that, you're this. But if you know you're true, it's not going to affect you. So if something is affecting you, it's probably because it is something that has been in you, some thought that has been in you in this life, or it is from a previous samskara. In that case, what do? Then you try to learn what it is that they're pointing out. Examine yourself. There's a great example of Swami Yukteswar, who was the guru of Swami Yogananda, my guru. And when Yogananda says in his autobiography of a yogi, he says, when anybody came and talked to Yukteswar in a bad way or scolded him, Yukteswar always listened. That great Swami, he always listened with patience. Then after they left, he sat down and he reflected to see if there was any truth to what they said. If such a great guru can do that, can't we as spiritual aspirants start to reflect and see, okay, this person is saying something to me. This thing has occurred that is causing me anger. Why is it? What is it that I need to change? And if you realize that, okay, you're fine and you know how to behave, how to respond in a very nice way, then let it go. Don't carry that anger. Many of us have this huge, if you're a clairvoyant, you would see a huge big bundle of anger and all these other emotions that we're carrying through our life. Why? Put it all in front of Agastya's feet or any god you pray to and say, you take care of that. You help me get rid of this. Because higher powers can help you when you sincerely ask them to help you to change yourself. Sometimes we can't do it on our own, but they can help you. So while talking about anger, what is the mark of a truly spiritual person? A real spiritually advanced person, whether it's a guru or a great master, will not get angry. They do not get angry because their ego is no longer affected by anything anybody says, because they realize that they are the divine. The soul cannot be touched by anything. The Vedas say that. Nor fire, nor water, nothing can touch the soul, nor can anything that anybody else touch the soul. Because the soul is pure, it is part of Paramatman, it is Atman. So if we can remember that, if we can hold on to that thought, then we can get rid of these two important things that can cause us to fail in spiritual life, which is jealousy and anger. In this, let me give you a small story. Once Buddha was walking, and if I have already said this, then pardon me, but this is a great story for this particular situation. Once Buddha was walking, and he came across this, lady who scolded him, saying, hey, you're a beggar, you're useless, and it was very, very bad, the way she scolded him. He just smiled and he kept walking away. Then one of his disciples asked him, how come you didn't feel bad about it? He said, here, take my ball. And the disciple took his ball. So he said, you have taken what I've given you. So now you will get the effect of it. When the lady was fighting or saying bad things about me, I did not accept it. So if I do not accept it, where does the bowl remain? In the lady's hand. If you hadn't accepted, where does the bowl remain? In my hand. In that case, what was thrown at me was not accepted. That is another way to deal with anger. So if we know all this, then we can get rid of anger and jealousy. There's one more small story, if that's okay. There was a saintly man who came into a village and he was sitting under a tree. And as the villagers saw him, they realized he was a great saint and they started bringing him food. Then the chieftain's daughter started personally attending to all his needs, bringing him food, bringing him water. Then many months passed, and then suddenly she became pregnant. And so all the villagers got angry and they came and said, you are and asked her what happened. And she said, he is the father of the child. So they came to him and they said, you're such a bad man. You need to get away. You're not worthy of being in a village. And so the saint said, so be it. Is that so? So be it. Then after a while, the baby was born and they gave the child to him and said, now you take care of the child because you're the one who is the father of the child. Is that so? So be it, he said. Then the girl started feeling very guilty because the saintly man was suffering because of her deeds. So then she confessed, no, he's not the father of the child. So they all came running to him and took his forgiveness and said, oh, we are so sorry, give us the child back, and it's please forgive us. And he said, is that so? So be it. So if we can come to that stage where no matter what kind of insults are thrown at us, then we have progressed in a spiritual path. And that is the message that Appa Agastya has for us today is learn to be spiritual, learn to be centered, learn to know yourself. When somebody says you're a liar and you're not a liar, know that it shouldn't affect you because you're not a liar. You know yourself. And if you find that there is a little truth in whatever somebody has said, then let go of it. Change yourself. Now let us go on to suffering. What does Appa say here? Sage Agastya, what is suffering? Why does it occur? Where does it take us? Something that is not to our liking or something that we cannot bear brings suffering. So Appa says, it's usually when something happens that we do not like, which makes it hard for us to continue with our daily life, then it makes us suffer, brings us unhappiness. Consider whether the suffering affects the body, the heart, or the mind. If there is a disability in the body, or there is a deficiency in beauty, or if there is a disease, it brings suffering to the body. And that we already know. So somebody has a problem with, suffering from, that's what we use, suffering from pain, headache. Yeah, we suffer. If it is something connected with a disease, we suffer. If it is a disability, we are suffering for a whole lifetime. Especially if it is a permanent disability. So this suffering is related to the body alone. So a person may be disabled, a person may have a disease, but they may not actually suffer in terms of the mind and emotion, because suffering for them is relevant only to the body. Such a person, even if they have cancer, are able to be cheerful, smile, and say, and we look at such people and say, oh my God, the body is going through so much and they're still happy, they're still smiling. So that person has divorced the idea of suffering from the mind and emotion. They're not blaming God. They're not blaming somebody else for their disability or their disease or the fact that they do not look good. They know that whatever has happened. They've accepted it. So one of the important things that makes life easier for us is acceptance. Accept how you are. Accept how you look. Accept it if you have some kind of a disease or disability, and know that it is what it is. You just it is part of your karmic pattern, and you just get on with your life and don't let it bother your mind and emotion. Then Appa says, consider whether the suffering affects the body, heart, or mind. And that we have already talked about. Then he continues, if there is sadness, it causes pain to the heart. Suffering of the mind may be caused by unfulfilled desires, criticism, unrequited love, or owing to an unforeseen test. Suffering may also occur over something that is anticipated but fails to occur. Like this, many other situations in life that cause pain and suffering. So there is a different kind of suffering. And what is that? That is the suffering of the heart or the mind. So something happens and there's a desire that is not unfulfilled, and we start suffer because of that. Oh, I want to pass in this exam. I want to get first rank. Then what happens? The person doesn't get first rank and they suffer. Oh, I need to get this promotion. And if they don't try and they don't get a promotion, they suffer. They want to get a job. They don't get the job, they suffer. Then there's another person who is in love with somebody, and that person doesn't respond, and we have great love stories in the world. So that person suffers because of this. Then many of us, we suffer because we are facing tests in our spiritual life. We are facing tests in our life, and tests will come as long as we have got still in this body. Tests will continue to come as long as we are still identified with this ego. identified with the form that I am Anu, this is my home, this is my family, this is my country, then that identification will bring us suffering, because anything occurs to any of these things. Think about it. How many people unnecessarily feel angry about a religion or a race or another country? If tomorrow, if we die, think about it. Tomorrow, if you die, how important is all this? So, one of the important things that you can do as a spiritual aspirant is, if something happens that causes you suffering to the mind and heart, think, okay, tomorrow, if I die, is this important? Mostly you'll see it is not. None of these things really matter. Tomorrow, if you're going to die, this promotion is not going to help. Tomorrow, if you're going to die, a special car is not going to help. So let us start looking at things that way. Then Appa says, if there is sadness, it causes pain to the heart. So suffering occurs because of all these different things. Then we continue. It is not right to suppress the pain in your heart. Yet it is also not right to not express pain all the time. Do not subject yourself to psychosis and exhibit a sad face all the time. Speaking emotionally or acting without enthusiasm creates disturbance not only in yourself, but also others around you. If you do not express pain, others will not know why you are in pain, and it will always remain a question. Because of this, you will have no peace, and those around you will have no peace either. Consider if you want this type of life. Now, Appa is talking about something very, very important. He says, do not suppress your pain. It's always good to speak about it, talk to others. When something is happening, if you know somebody is empathetic, who will not misuse the information that you're giving them, because that happens in life. Be discerning, but share what you feel with those you trust, with those you love. Sharing always helps, because even if they are not able to resolve the problem, just sharing that brings it out into the open. It's no longer suppressed in your heart. So do not keep letting pain and suffering remain in your heart, because that causes physical damage. Emotional and mental suffering, if it is not expressed out, if it is not resolved, can result in physical disease. This is a fact, because remember, this is all energy. The more energy you're keeping within you and adding to it this negative energy, then it's affecting the organs associated with that. So remember, when you're suffering, okay, let me talk this out. That is why in America and other Western countries, they have a lot of counselors. Counselors make big money because people do not have the social circle or family circle that in India we take for granted, which is the most beautiful thing, because you are talking to all these people who are helping you. And that is why we have lesser incidences of mental diseases. I think if somebody does a research, they'll see that. Here in America, you'll have almost every other person talking about, oh, I'm stressed, I have this disorder, I have that mental disorder. And it has become part of life, and it need not be. Because mental and physical, emotional suffering can be dealt with, can be resolved. It is within our own hands. So Hapa says, talk to people you trust. And he says, when somebody gets so upset and angry, there's another way they react. They become silent. They keep their face really dull. They don't express. And nobody knows, okay, why is this person angry? You don't know. You keep asking them. And then there's a conflict that is arising because the other person is feeling uncomfortable in such a situation. And this is especially so if it is in a family circle, in intimate family circles, especially husband and wife. If there is a problem, speak it out, talk to each other. Be able to, walk away, tell the other person, can I take a few moments away? Maybe can we talk about this later? And then once you have, set it all right in your own mind, and both of you are in a good frame of mind, then talk it out. Otherwise, what is going to happen is you're going to keep your face deadpan and upset and down, and the other person is going to feel angry, and it is going to keep building up. Sappa says, don't do that. Then he says, Do you want to consider, if you do not express your pain, others will not know why you're in pain, and it will always remain as a question. So that will keep bothering them, and it will in one day erupt. One day it will all come out into the open in a bad way, like a volcano. So instead of this, he says, because of this, you will have no peace, and those around you will have no peace either. Consider if you want this type of life. So let us consider whether do we really want that? Do we want that kind of atmosphere? Because the house has to be an oasis, especially in the current Kali Yuga, when there's so much bad going on around us. There's so much negativity. You turn on the TV and there is negativity in the news. You look outside, you talk to somebody, there's theft, there's burglary, there's this, there's that. Let us keep our homes as oceans of peace, as oases of peace and calm. And how can we do that? By our own behavior. So when something is going wrong, talk it out with the other person. So, of course, giving us very practical examples on how to live life. Then he says, the most commonly known example is that of a man who cries because he does not have the means to buy a pair of shoes. It is only when he sees another without feet that he realizes that having feet in itself is a great blessing. All of us know this. All of us know this very simple example. You cry that you don't have shoes, good pair of shoes, and somebody doesn't have a pair of feet. What do? You feel fortunate. So start feeling fortunate every day of the life. When you wake up, say, I am happy that I'm alive because I can finish my karma. I am happy that, I have a home, I have food to eat. Be happy for the small things of life that God has given you or your own good karma has resulted in. Be satisfied. And if you want to compare yourself to somebody who's without what you have. And then you'll always feel satisfied. Then you'll always feel better. And you'll maybe go further and say, how can I help the other person? That is a more spiritual way to live. Let's continue. So what does Appa say again? What does one need to have a healthy body and peaceful mind? A clean and tidy place to live, peaceful coexistence with nature, consumption of naturally grown food, refraining from excess in terms of how we obtain what we want, the extent and how we experience it. Very important. The mind always has a combination of desire, intention, sweetness, bitterness, happiness, and sadness. Those that harbor only good thoughts and perform good actions will always have a balanced state of mind. In addition, no types of weaknesses will bother one who believes in God and surrenders himself at God's feet and spends his time in higher contemplation. These two paragraphs can be, debated and discussed at length because there's so much in each one. But we have about 4 minutes, and I'll try to finish as much as I can. What gives us a healthy body and a peaceful mind, clean and tidy place to live? This is something that is under everyone's control. Each one of us can keep the place we live clean and tidy. How hard is it? Why does he say that? The more clutter there is, the more you're trying to move things around, get rid of things, clean things. You don't have time for higher spiritual pursuits. Why spend all your time moving things around which are not going to take with you when you die? Why keep things that you have not looked at it for 10 years? Start minimizing what you need. Become simple in your life. You will have more time for yourself. SELF, yourself. Remember that. So that is something all of us can do. Keep a clean and tidy place. Peaceful coexistence with nature. That means man as a whole, humanity as a whole has to understand this. We cannot take more from nature than its ability to give. And that is why all these things are happening in the world. The climate change, all this heat that is becoming unbearable in countries, it's only going to get worse as long as humanity does not come as one and stops doing this, stops, looting Mother Nature. We can't do that. We can't afford to have any more wars. We can't afford to destroy what we have already built. We don't have the resources. Now, consumption of naturally grown food. That's very important again. Eat healthy food, natural food. Don't eat food that is in the fridge, refrigerated or frozen or canned. It does not have prana. We'll go back to it later. Refrain from excess in terms of how we obtain and what we want, and to extent and how we experience it. So let everything to be to a limit. So always have good thoughts and perform good actions. And if you're always in the contemplation of God, then that is the greatest armor against all suffering. There was a time when I was so totally engrossed in God. I used to wear white. I never used to read newspapers or look at things, and never thought about anything, never talked to anybody other than spiritual stuff. I was most peaceful. But however, that is very hard for all of us to do. We have to go to work, we have to face people, we have to live in family, society. In that case, most of your time, keep God in your heart, if possible, all the time. Just like you listen to some song and it keeps playing in the back of your mind, keep God in the back of your mind. Surrender to Him. Tell Him, as soon as you wake up, Appa, take care of me, help me, guide me to be virtuous, and let me walk on the path of Dharma. And He will help you. God will help you. So, with this, we will finish today's session, and we will continue next week with other examples.